Project Zomboid is one of the only zombie games where your biggest threat isn't always the horde themselves. Sometimes it's your own character. The guy who gets exhausted after jogging just for 30 seconds. The survivor who panics at the first sight of blood. The chain smoker trying to survive the apocalypse, all while going through nicotine withdrawal. And yet, somehow, players will still willingly choose these traits for extra points. Because inside the video game, they feel manageable. But what about in real life? So today we're asking the brutal question. If the apocalypse was real, which traits could you actually survive with? And which ones would quietly turn you into the first person dead in your friend group? Starting off with our very first trait, Sunday Driver. Though Sunday Driver isn't too bad, in certain situations, a Sunday Driver can cause a life or death situation. There's been moments where I've been stuck in grass and surrounded by zombies. With Sunday Driver, you won't really be able to accelerate quickly enough, which would put you in precarious situations. However, on the flip side, if you play perfectly and never put yourself in that type of situation, well, that's a free point. Sunday Driver also affects your ability to tow vehicles, which I think is equally worse since it can single-handedly ruin your ability to stockpile vehicles during endgame. And every long-term Project Zomboid player knows just how important it is to have spare vehicles on standby. So with that being said, how well would Sunday Driver pan out in real life? I honestly don't think it would be that bad. As long as it's the walking zombies and not the sprinting type, I think you should be good. The only issue would be if you need a lot of momentum to drive through something. Then you might be cooked. But since it doesn't exactly define life or death, we're gonna have to give this a B, Survival with Discipline. Moving on to the next trait, All Thumbs. Me personally, I don't think I've ever chose this trait in my entire experience in Project Zomboid. The idea of transferring loot slowly in Project Zomboid seems like so much of a waste of time. In fact, I always choose dexterous just for this very reason. Imagine you're making a loot run, you're starving, and food is your #1 priority. You stop at a grocery store and zombies are all around the area. You only have a few seconds to get in and out. Well, All Thumbs will greatly affect just how fast you can grab stuff off the shelves. I honestly think the faster you loot, the chances of surviving greatly increases. As for the real world, I think it's similar to Sunday Driver. It has a great impact, but doesn't necessarily define your outcome. If there's no rush, then you can take your sweet time looting. And I also think a better name for this would be No Thumbs, right? Wouldn't it be called No Thumbs? Anyways, I'm gonna rate this B, Survivable with Discipline. Moving on to Clumsy. Clumsy increases your footstep audio, which makes more noise when moving. In game, this could make survival much harder, as zombies will hear you coming from a mile away. I'm really not sure if this affects sneaking in any way, but in extinction mode, this trait would truly suck. The zombie population is greatly increased in most POIs. I normally don't choose Clumsy as I love to be sneaky and I love to sneak past zombies. But in real life, I think this would be one of the worst traits to have. If you're clumsy in real life while trying to survive the apocalypse, I wish the best of luck for you. Imagine escaping from a horde and you just trip and fall. Imagine you're fighting off a horde of zombies and your weapon goes flying out your hand across the room. Yeah, that would actually suck. And for those reasons, I'm going to give this A, Constant Danger. I'm pretty sure you can train yourself not to be clumsy, but let's be honest here. Some people are just naturally a klutz. Moving on to Cowardly. Cowardly makes you more prone to panic attacks, giving you 200% panic. According to Project Zomboid Wiki, not only does being panicked narrows your vision cone, it also reduces critical damage that you deal, as well as reducing knockdown and knockback. Now, just to clarify, because I honestly did not know this myself, players gain panic if there's a zombie behind them. Respawning zombies also increases panic. Panic is gained at 3% per zombie and continues to increase by 0.5 per in-game minute, while zombies are visible to the player. It's important to note that players will gain panic only from zombies visible on screen, so zooming in your camera helps reduce panic. Now, over time, this becomes less common as players increase panic recovery speed, which increases up to a maximum of 150 days survived. Characters with the desensitized trait can never gain levels of panic from exposure to zombies. However, they can still get panicked through nightmares during sleep. The funny part is, I usually always choose Smoker, and my character is almost always panicked, so this kinda makes sense, not gonna lie. Now, is this a trait you would survive with in real life? I think you can survive the apocalypse while being panicked, as long as it's not the type of panicked where you're like frozen in place, or you just can't move. Other than that, I think you'll be good. And for that, we're gonna be giving this a C. Honestly, not that bad. Moving on to fast and slow metabolism. I want to start by saying I do want to make like an in-depth guide to track your caloric intake to best thrive during winter. I have a really cool idea in mind, so be on the lookout for that video. Starting off with fast metabolism. Most players generally avoid this trait. Why? Well, fast metabolism gives you low weight, which in turn makes it harder to maintain calories. This leads to you taking more melee damage and becoming more vulnerable to injuries. A similar logic applies to low metabolism, which lowers the calories threshold needed to gain weight. That makes it much harder to avoid gaining weight even from the simplest meals. As a result, you end up with high weight, which reduces overall fitness, decreases run speed and endurance, and increases the chance of tripping while sprinting or failing to climb tall fences. I'm pretty sure you can pick the chef occupation, which provides detailed calorie information for each meal, but that would require an entirely specific build. Now, in the real world, would overweight and underweight people survive differently? I think overweight individuals, depending on how much weight they're carrying, would struggle more than slimmer individuals simply because fitness is their weak point. Skinny individuals would likely be more agile, but would require significantly more food to sustain themselves if they had a fast metabolism. With that being said, I'd rate fast metabolism constant danger, and I'm sorry to say this, but slow metabolism cooked. Moving on to one of my favorites, high thirst. Honestly, I got a love-hate relationship with this trait. In the early game, when water is still running, it's extremely manageable. But once the water shuts off and supplies start going bad over time, which I highly recommend installing a mod for this since it adds realism and a challenge, this trait becomes a real problem. If you're based near a river or a well and bring 3 or 4 bottles per run, you might be fine for a while, but over time it becomes very annoying. This trait effectively makes you 100% more thirsty. There have been multiple runs where I couldn't access clean water and ended up slowly dying from dehydration. It's definitely not a forgiving trait at all. Now, how would this translate over in the real world? Being twice as thirsty throughout the day would be a constant hassle. Sure, it's manageable if you always have water available, but if your supply runs out, things go downhill quickly. For that reason, I'd give high thirst a constant danger. Moving on to short-sighted. Short-sighted reduces your view distance and slows visibility fade. At first glance, it sounds terrible, but it can actually be negated with glasses, which I didn't even realize that. Since view distance is blurred past about 4 tiles, it mainly affects scouting ahead and situational awareness. In Project Zomboid, it's fairly manageable, but in real life, I think it would be slightly more punishing. Not being able to see clearly in a survival scenario would be one of the worst disadvantages you could possibly have. Thankfully, you're only short-sighted, and with glasses it becomes manageable. With that in mind, I'd rate it B. Survivable with discipline. Just don't lose your glasses. Next up in line is slow reader. In Project Zomboid, this trait affects long-term progression. To efficiently level your skills, you rely on reading skill books for XP boosts, then practicing those same skills to accelerate progression. With Slow Reader, you can still read books normally. The issue is that it takes significantly longer to finish them. It doesn't directly threaten your survival, but it heavily slows long-term development. In real life, I highly doubt slow reading would significantly impact survival at all. If anything, it might just make time feel like it passes differently. So with that being said, I'm gonna have to give this a D. No effect whatsoever. Next on the list is weak stomach. Weak stomach increases your chance of food illness and makes food poisoning last longer. Food illness in Project Zomboid usually comes from tainted water, poisonous substance, or raw, stale, or rotten food. Now that I actually think about it, this might not be a bad trait if you're actually careful. You just avoid anything risky and you're fine. Some veteran players even pair weak stomach with prone to illness, thinking it's free points. But the game has evolved so much that even environmental factors can get you killed. So the meta definitely is shifting. In real life, a weak stomach would be a major inconvenience. Constant nausea or vomiting would make daily life extremely difficult. So with that being said, I'd have to give this a B. Survivable with discipline. Moving on to Slow Healer. Slow Healer does exactly what it sounds like. For a small number of points, you severely increase injury recovery time from about 40 to 60% longer healing time. That means scratches and laceration takes longer to recover, while fractures and deep wounds can take weeks and require extended bed rest. Since healing is slower, you also spend more time bleeding, which increases infection risk. Some players argue it's actually a decent trait to choose, because if you ever get bitten, it's usually fatal anyways. So just don't get bit. But that ignores all the smaller injuries you accumulate over time. There have been countless moments where I've crashed vehicles, stepped on broken glass, heck, I've even fallen from a third-story building, which took me almost a month to recover from. So I can't imagine how much worse it would be with Slow Healer. So with that being said, I'm gonna have to give this another B. Survivable with discipline. Just never get injured and you're fine. Next is Smoker. Smoker is honestly a go-to trait for many players. Stress and unhappiness increases when nicotine isn't consumed, so you're gonna need cigarettes to manage it. You can often find cigarettes in gas stations, glove compartments of the vehicles, and even on zombies themselves. In Project Zomboid, it's kinda like duct tape. You never find them when you need them, but suddenly you find a bunch when you don't need them. The downside is that Smoker can actually get you killed, especially in high-risk situations. The random coughing can give away your position. For example, hiding in a garage at nighttime with no stamina. You might cough while sleeping and wake up surrounded. I've had that happen to me before. In real life, survival depends on the person. Are we talking about a heavy smoker who can barely breathe, or a casual weekend stoner? So I'm gonna have to rate this maybe a C. Honestly, not that bad. Next in line is agoraphobic. I used to think that agoraphobic kinda just meant being antisocial, but it actually causes panic to rise the longer you stay outdoors. It also reduces foraging efficiency and makes sleeping outside almost impossible due to nightmares. And honestly, if you're genuinely afraid of being outside, especially during a zombie apocalypse, I think you're cooked. How else are you supposed to gather supplies and fortify anything? So yeah, agoraphobic, cooked. Next in line is the complete opposite, claustrophobic. For +4 points, you can get increased panic while indoors. In most runs, you eventually need to stay inside and fortify a base, which makes this trait pretty annoying. With that being said, I honestly don't think it's as bad as agoraphobic. You can still go out and loot freely, which is the most important part of survival. Claustrophobia just makes the save phase of the game more stressful, not the core gameplay loop. Believe it or not, I'm gonna give this a C. Not too bad. Moving on to conspicuous. Conspicuous basically increases your visibility, which makes zombies more likely to spot you from a distance. If you're up for this kind of challenge, this grants you +4 points. However, doubling your visibility to every single zombie is a bad thing. Many veteran players consider this free points, and it makes pulling zombies a little bit more reliable. Though I personally haven't tested it in the new build, I have noticed zombies will stop following you after some time. So me personally, I usually choose burglar and level up sneaking fairly quickly. So choosing conspicuous would definitely hurt my normal gameplay. But how well would conspicuous fare in real life? Though this will challenge your survival abilities, I do think it's still manageable. And for that, I'll be giving this an A, constant danger. Next in line is hard of hearing. I honestly don't think I've chosen anything this far into the list. Hard of hearing grants you 4 points, and in return, this reduces your character's hearing radius, making it harder to detect zombies who try to sneak up from behind. This means broken windows, banging on doors, and alarms will be much harder to hear. Basically, this decreases your awareness, leaving you far more vulnerable. Though some veteran players swear that you can simply bypass this by turning up your audio to accommodate, it still can pose a huge problem. Now, in real life, I think this would be one of the more deadlier traits to have. In real life, I'd imagine you'd be constantly looking over your shoulder 24/7, making sure you aren't being trailed by zombies. Well, with hard of hearing, sometimes you might miss those subtle cues, which in the end will cost you your life. And with that being said, I think we're gonna give this an A, constant danger. Next in line is Hearty Appetite. This trait basically makes your character get more hungry, 50% faster than normal. I honestly think Hearty Appetite is one of the worst traits you can choose in the game. Though it might be manageable during the early game where there's an abundance of food everywhere, during late game this can pose as a real problem. If you don't have a reliable source of food on standby, then you're pretty much cooked. Imagine you're 6 months into your survival. All you have left is a bag of chips, and there's no food within the entire town. Hearty Appetite is going to make this way harder to keep on pushing through. I think this trait can be far worse than High Thirst, since water can be way easier to obtain via rain collectors. So, how would Hearty Appetite hold up in the real world? Well, during the beginning of the apocalypse, maybe it wouldn't be that much of an issue. But as the days progress and food becomes more and more scarce, let's just say you will simply be a burden amongst your friend group. And since it's a zombie apocalypse and supplies are limited, we're going to have to give this an S. Cooked! Moving on next to Prone to Illness. Prone to Illness is another trait I never chose, but after making this video, it might actually be viable. The Prone to Illness trait increases your susceptibility to regular diseases such as colds, food poisoning, and corpse sickness. It also accelerates your transformation into a zombie if you're ever bitten, so that could be a plus, I guess. Colds are significantly more worse, as well as food poisoning and sickness. Now, in game, you could argue that if you never catch a cold or eat rotten food, then this might be free points. But if you're a long-term player, you'll know that this is basically unavoidable. So, how well would Prone to Illness hold up in the real world? Being that the original Project Zomboid lore, the infection is airborne, which, by the way, if you're unaware of the lore, check out my video covering the entire timeline. You can click right here. I think it's safe to say that we're going to have to give this an A, constant danger. And last but not least for this episode, moving on to Sleepyhead. Sleepyhead basically causes your character to get tired 30% faster and reduce sleep efficiency by roughly 10%. This means you'll need more than your traditional 8 hours of sleep, roughly around 12 hours of sleep, which is exactly half of the entire day. You also have faster fatigue gain, and will more likely see the drowsy moodle appear halfway throughout your day. Now, I personally would never choose this trait, as time is valuable in Project Zomboid. I usually like to start my day off around 8 to 9 AM, and spend the rest of the day making progress and moving towards the endgame. With this perk, you're basically sleeping the entire day, and you'll get tired way faster, which will also affect your stamina and combat skills. So, how would sleepyhead hold up in the real world? Honestly, I don't think it would be that bad. As long as you're super mindful about your fatigue and have a super safe base to fall asleep when you get tired. Yes, it will reduce your time you have to actually do important things like gather supplies and fortify your base, but with good discipline, I think you can make it quite far. So, we'll be giving this a B. Survivable with discipline. So that's gonna be all for this video. I wasn't really anticipating this video to be this long, but I just kind of forgot how many traits there were in Project Zomboid. So if you guys like the series, and if this video gets 100 likes, I'll go on to cover the last 13 traits. And if not, we'll just move on to other topics. But as always, I'm curious to hear your take on which is the worst trait to have out of all the traits we've covered so far. It's your boy Prince, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more kick-ass content. Peace!